Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, the Minister of Education has talked about how proud he is that his ministry has fully funded enrollment growth. The Calgary Board of Education, Mr. Speaker, would beg to differ. According to the CBE, they are facing a $35 million shortfall. Provincial funding simply has not kept up with enrollment growth. There's no backfill funding for reduced school fees for alternative programs, and the funding they have provided is at 2015-16 levels. And that doesn't even consider the nearly $200 million in urgent deferred maintenance. To the Minister of Education, who's right? How do you explain the discrepancy between your claims and the challenges faced by the CBE?
The Honourable Minister of
Thank
Education.
you, Mr. Speaker. And you know, this has become an annual event where I have Calgary Board of Education saying that they have this deficit, and then by the end of the year they end up posting a surplus. And so I have had them under audits for the last few months, and so we've been working collaboratively for ways by which we can rectify this process, and we have a very collaborative and constructive relationship by which to do so. And you know, what you really don't do if you want to make contributions to education is you do not make massive 20% cuts to education, as the members opposite are saying that they're going to do.
Well, good news, Mr. Speaker. The Alberta Party's shadow budget has a higher investment in education than this government's budget currently. So given the shortfall in funding is going to result in jobs being cut, and given that many of the jobs lost will be support staff who work with students with complex learning needs, disabilities, or mental health challenges, and given that reduced funding levels of support staff will have serious negative consequences for those students, again to the Minister of Education. You've been telling Albertans that your government supports public education, but your funding plan clearly says otherwise. How can you explain this to students, parents, teachers, and staff?
Honourable Minister.
Well, again, Mr. Speaker, you know, it's I did have the Calgary Board of Education under financial review, and we're looking for ways by which they can make sure that they prioritize to spend money in classrooms, given the substantial investment that we have made into the CBE. It's my expectation, and for all Calgarians for that matter, that they make decisions to make sure that they balance their budget without influencing and cutting frontline staffing levels in the City of Calgary.
So, Mr. Speaker, given that one of the reasons the CBE is facing a shortfall is this government's carbon tax, and given that asking school boards to pay a carbon tax really is just transferring dollars from one level of government to another, and given school boards have a very limited ability to reduce the carbon tax they pay because there's a fixed number of school buses required to transport kids to school, once more to the Minister of Education, will you acknowledge the unintended consequences of your plan and eliminate the carbon tax on school boards?
Honourable Minister.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Members opposite they want more money, and then they want us to make cuts, and you know, it's all very confusing. I can give a very simple process by which we are making sure that we owe it to our children to give them a great schools and education that we are investing in, and to protect the planet that they will inherit from us. Quite frankly, Mr. Speaker, that is not negotiable, and I don't think for most majority of Albertans is it as well. We are making investments in schools. We've made significant investments in Calgary in regards to the solar and energy initiatives in terms of upgrading schools, upgrading boilers, improving windows and lights to make sure that they are not just reduced.
Thank you.